before we get started. So thank you everyone for joining us. It's nice to have all of you join us for this weekly Tanya class. It was a bit of a spontaneous decision, but it was a spontaneous decision that was long in the making. In general, I've long wanted to increase the amount of classes and the type of classes that we give here. But specifically Tanya, which is just so beneficial in general in life as Jews, as people who care about God, who care about, our own personal development and relationship with Hashem. Tanya is, it's like baking bread without flour is, living life as a Jew without Tanya is, you're missing something, So, specifically, just one more thing about how this got started. Specifically, this past Shabbos and Sunday, we celebrated Yud Tes Kislev, what's known as Rosh Hashanah for Hasidism. It's the day that the Alter Rebbe, the author of the Tanya, the founder of Chabad Hasidism, was released from prison in 1798. He actually wasn't immediately released home. Accidentally, he was released to the house of a misnagid, one of those who was part of the group of people who got him into prison in the first place. But he spent some time there, hearing some scathing rebuke in a very disrespectful manner. But be it as it may, he still respected his host. And even when they discovered him there, it was already the 20th day of Kislev, he insisted that he finish his tea before leaving. So that happened on the 20th of Kislev. So that's why the holiday is a 2-day holiday. Additionally, the first printing of the Tanya was exactly 2 years prior to this event in 1796 on the 20th of Kislev. So we're just 1 day shy of that anniversary. And it's a good time to start a Tanya study cycle. I should mention that there is a cycle to study Tanya daily, and I encourage you to go to JewishArcadia.com/daily study, and you can study Tanya daily. But granted, to do something daily inevitably means that you're doing it more peripherally. You might be reading through it quickly, might miss some days here and there, and even if you're committed, sometimes you just keep on going, even though you might miss out some parts. The idea of doing something weekly is to give us a chance to do it a little more in depth, especially when we do it as a group. As we'll see, the nature of what Tanya is helpful to do it as a group because it makes it a lot more relevant and practical. I just want to share the link to the text that we'll be going off of here in the chat. And let me just minimize this a second. Okay. Actually, I cannot do that. Let's see. Title page. Okay. But before we actually go into the text, I'm not even sure if we'll actually get to the actual text today, because I want to kind of give a bit of a intro. So first and foremost, this is a bit of a personal question to start off with, but I figured might as well break the ice. Do you ever feel that you are struggling, or let's put it this way, do you ever feel like you're forcing yourself to serve Hashem and to do what he wants?
Well, who can say no?
So I'll take that as a yes. We have a yes from Larry. David? That's a yes. Vicky?
No, I don't think so. I don't feel like I'm being forced to. I think it's voluntary on my part. There's days when I feel distraught.
No, I don't mean force from the outside. I mean, do you ever feel like there's a struggle and you have to push yourself beyond that struggle?
No, that was 2 years ago, but not so much lately.
Okay, fair enough. So, I was hoping you'd say yes, but it's okay. Maybe that'll change, because the goal of Tanya is, I mean, there's many goals, but the way I understand it is that it's for somebody who feels like they're struggling, or they have struggles from time to time, and they have to overcome those struggles in order to be able to serve Hashem properly. Now, part of that is that Tanya helps us realize who is our true self. What is our truest identity? When we do have sometimes opposing voices inside of us telling us to do this or to do that, sometimes it's two good voices. One voice tells us to let's say, for example, donate to this charity, and one voice tells us to donate to that charity, and both are good things. And it could be a challenge to figure out what's the right thing to do in this time, in this moment. So, in light of these struggles that many people experience, and I would argue that all people experience this to some level, Hashem was kind enough to give us the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of Hasidism, about 300 years ago, and then with that, his disciples, the Maggid of Mezrich and the Alter Rebbe, the author of the Tanya, which help us uncover our souls and help us really work in this battle effectively. So, in the various genres of Jewish law, by the way, of Jewish study, by the way, just a couple of days ago, anybody who follows the Wordle app, basically an app where you have to guess a word every day, and you have like 6 tries. If you get it wrong, you got to wait till the next day. Anyway, so there was an E in there and there was an R, and we were trying to figure out what the other 3 letters was. The other 3 letters was GEN, was genre. Anyways, so there's different genres in Torah study. One of the genres in Torah study is Shulchan Aruch, the Code of Jewish Law, which is basically telling us right from wrong, right from left. What do we do here? What do we do there? When to stand up, when to sit down, which shoe to tie before the other, when to light the candles before Shabbos, when to, just how to live our daily lives, what to do. So Tanya is not here to tell us what to do, but rather it's a way to reveal our souls and to help us do that which we need to do. Because sometimes we might have the what to do very, very clearly laid out in front of us, and maybe even a step-by-step guide in how to do it. But then, for some reason, there are challenges along the way, and Tanya helps us overcome that challenge or those challenges by revealing our souls. Now, in general, when people struggle in life, they often seek counseling, whether that's spiritual counseling, mental health counseling, health counsel, whatever it might be. Now, how is it possible to have a book that is supposed to address every human challenge possible? We all live in a physical world, and physicality, or gashmius, as it's called in Hebrew, this corporal world that we live in, presents different challenges for different people. For some people, their challenge is that they work too much, and they're trying to, figure out how to work less hours. Some people, they're not working enough, and they're trying to figure out how to get more hours in, right? Every person has their own unique challenges, and how is it possible that somebody can have the chutzpah to say, I'm going to write a book and I'm going to solve all your, internal challenges? So the truth is that the author, the Alter Rebbe, in writing this book, he addressed this challenge. He said, I know that I'm climbing a tree that's impossible to climb. I know that I'm trying to write a book that's supposed to have the answers to everybody's questions. But yet, the Alter Rebbe proceeds to write this book with the confidence that all of these questions can and will be answered. One of the solutions Alter Rebbe does give is, he says, the book cannot be read on its own and, with the expected result of having all the answers, but rather it should be accompanied with somebody else, a third party, preferably somebody who knows more Torah than yourself and knows you personally. But even if not, even if it's just a fellow Jew who you're studying with, who can help enlighten you with the application of the words of the Tanya to your personal life. And that's what I was referencing earlier when I said that it's one thing to just study Tanya from a page or a podcast or something else, but it's a whole nother thing when you're learning it with other people that you're able to relate the Tanya to real life. Now, it's there's a rule brought in writing. It's brought about holy books, but I think in some ways it could be applied to any book in general, that you can really encapsulate the entirety of the message of the whole book in just reading the first few chapters, right? And that's why so many of us, after a couple of chapters, we either put down the book, whichever book it may be, or we can't put it down, right? Because in those first couple of chapters, we already have an idea. Is this something I'm into, or is this something I'm not into? Somebody can argue, but 1 second, you didn't get to chapter 7. That's where it gets exciting. Well, I don't have time to wait till chapter 7. The exciting stuff has to be in the beginning. I have to know what this is about already from the beginning. And Tanya is written in that way too. It follows those rules that the beginning of Tanya, the first few chapters, helps us understand what is the neshama, what is the soul. And the Alter Rebbe starts in chapter 1 with explaining the different types of people, and we struggle. Where does this come from? And so he says, there's animalistic tendencies where we do things for self-indulgence and self-gratification. But then already in chapter 2, before, there's 53 chapters just in the first section. And already in chapter 2, he's like, well, now let me tell you about your godly soul. And he goes on to explain what that is at its very core. And then he goes in the further chapters, he goes into greater detail of elaborating of what the soul can do, what powers it has, what its capabilities are. And that really is the essence of what Tanya is trying to teach us. Meaning its goal is to teach us that we are special, that we are empowered, that we have certain godly capabilities, believe it or not. And that's an incredibly empowering message. And so because that message is so important, and in some ways that is fundamental to what the Tanya is, that's why he doesn't waste time in going off on other topics before really getting to the crux of, what we want to deal with. Now, the Rebbe Rashab, who was the 5th Chabad Rebbe, he had a study session with his own son, his one and only son, Yosef Yitzchak, who later became the 6th Lubavitcher Rebbe. And before he started studying with him the Tanya, he gave him a little introduction. So I thought, if that's an introduction that was already given, then we should also have this introduction. And this is what he said. He said, Tanya is like the Chumash. It's like, in other words, it's like the 5 books of Moses. And or to paraphrase that, Hasidim would say, Tanya is the written Torah of Hasidism, right? Just like you have the written Torah, and then you have all the Talmudic explanation and the Medrash and this and all these other books and topics explaining the Torah. So too, Tanya is like the written Torah of Hasidus, and then you have all the commentaries added to that. So the truth is, every Jew learns Torah, or ought to learn Torah. Now, what that looks like for each person is very different. For one person, it just means they open up, let's say this week we're Parshas Vayeshev, in the middle of the book of Genesis, chapter, I think, 37, and they'll read word for word in Hebrew or in English or both, maybe a commentary or two. Some people will go into the Talmudic deciphering of different words. Some people like to take apart the words and and count the numerical value of each letter. That's the Baal HaTurim. There's different ways of learning the same text of the Torah, right? But at the very core, you're still learning the Torah portion or a Torah portion, right? Similarly, when it comes to Tanya, there's no one way to learn Tanya, right? And that's why, you know, I don't come here claiming that you know, that if you want to learn Tanya, come learn it with me. You know, that I'm the Tanya teacher. You know, in today's day and age, you can get Tanya anywhere, and you should, because every time you learn Tanya, you'll get a different angle of it. You'll get a different commentary, a different application of it, and all of that is good and valuable. Now, the Rebbe Rashab continued to tell his son like this. He said, it is well known how much effort and toil the Alter Rebbe put into his Tanya when putting it together, not just in the content and the meaning of what he's speaking of, but also in the precise language that he uses. The Alter Rebbe's brother, his name was Yehuda Leib. We have a Yehuda Leib over here in our class. But he was not Yehuda Leib from Arcadia, but he was Yehuda Leib of Yanovich. He was the brother of the Alter Rebbe. And he once found the Alter Rebbe sitting by his table. His head was leaning over his left hand. He had his pen in his right hand, and he was kind of just stuck there. And he was, you know, meditating. And when he woke up from his meditation, the Alter Rebbe turned to his brother and he said, "This is all. I'm now already at week number 3 in thinking about this particular word, whether or not to write the letter Vav." For those who don't know, the letter Vav means "and" in Hebrew. So I'm trying to figure out, I guess the equivalent of that in English would be, do I do a comma and then write it as a separate thing? Or do I just add the word "and" to connect those things together? Is it salt and pepper, or is it salt, comma, pepper, and then the next thing, right? So I'm sitting here spending 3 weeks figuring out how should I word it. And the Alter Rebbe said that for a Vav in this book, it's worth spending 6 weeks on. And you should know that every Vav, every letter that's sort of like a prefix or a suffix or connecting two words, every letter like that of such significance, before deciding whether or not to write it or how to write it, I had to rethink the entirety of the whole book before deciding finally with a Vav or without a Vav. Because ultimately, there's one coherent message that the Tanya is trying to bring across, and there's lots of words, lots of chapters that are used to facilitate that point. And because of that, every letter is so precise, so important to get that exactly right in order to make sure that the whole flow is understood correctly and is conveyed properly. And so that's why you see throughout the generations following the Alter Rebbe that there are books and books that have been written on the Tanya, commentary on the Tanya, to help us perhaps achieve somewhat of the wisdom of the Alter Rebbe that he included in the book of Tanya. However, my goal in this class is not necessarily to start spending time in figuring out why the Alter Rebbe wrote a certain Vav and why he didn't. Hopefully, whatever intent the Alter Rebbe had in adding or reducing that Vav is plainly understandable now that it is the way, however he wrote it, whichever way he wrote it, with a Vav or without a Vav. Just again to go by that example. And our goal is to just understand the plain meaning of the text of Tanya, and not to go into the deliberations of why did he write it this way and not that way. Try to just understand it, and most importantly, apply it to ourselves, to I guess farbring together, to really work through the Tanya and see, okay, this is relatable. Here's an example. Here's a real life scenario where this plays out, and to sort of understand the text and apply it to ourselves. So that's hopefully what we'll be able to do. So with that, I know we have about 4 minutes left. I just want to go to the Sharblat of Tanya. It's called the the Sharblat is the title page of Tanya. In the link I sent you, you can, I'll just send the link again, more specific to that Sharblat.
Oh, crap.
I'm sorry? So this is what the Sharblat actually looks like in the Hebrew. It kind of has like a little title on top. It says the name of the publisher, the name of the book, and then it has like a few lines of its purpose and kind of tells you what it contains, etc. We're not going to read all of it, but just this first section is what we're reading in the English text that you have in front of you. So he says, Sefer Lekutei Amarim, the book of a collection of sayings. See, the Alter Rebbe, in his humility, he didn't actually purport to be composing anything of his own, but rather he said, look, I'm just gathering sayings from other places and compiling it together. And then he says, Chelik Rishon, part 1, Hanikra B'Shem Sefer Shel Beinonim, which is entitled Sefer Shel Beinonim. What does Sefer Shel Beinonim mean? It means the book of intermediaries. In other words, this is not, as we'll see, he'll explain further, it's not for people who think that, I have life figured out. Then you're a tzaddik, you're a perfect person, Perfect people don't need any help. And it's not for wicked people who seek to do evil and only, destroy the world. That's not for you either. It's a book for intermediaries, people who try to do good, but sometimes it could be difficult. And so that's a very broad spectrum, of course. Some people do good more often. Some people make those good choices more often than others. But all of us are more or less in the category of a Beinoni, of a intermediary person. And then he says that it's Melukot mipi Sfarim and mipi Seifrim, compiled from sacred books and from sages, Kedoshei Elyon, exalted saints, Nishmasam Eden, whose souls are in Eden. Some of those who he's referring to is his teacher, the Magen of Mezrich, and his teacher's teacher, the Baal Shem Tov. And this entire book is based on the verse, Kikaro velacha hadavar me'od beficha v'lbavcha la'asoso. For it is exceedingly near to you, in your heart, mouth, and in your heart to do. That's a pasuk from Deuteronomy, from Devarim, where Hashem is telling us, listen here, lest you think that the Torah is, you have to cross a sea to get there, or you have to somehow climb to the skies to reach love of Hashem and fear of Hashem and experiencing Hashem's presence in your life. It's not so far. And this is something that the Torah tells us. Again, this is going along the theme. The Alter Rebbe is not making any of this up. He's telling us this is a pasuk in the Torah. So what do we do with this pasuk? And the Alter Rebbe continues that my job here is to explain clearly how it is exceedingly near in a lengthy and short way. Right? We all know the difference between the short, long way and the long, short way. The short, long way is here. In miles, it's a lot shorter. But the road isn't paved. There's some trees in the way. You might have to bring your what's it called? To chop down trees, a chainsaw, and yeah, it's technically shorter, but we all understand that that's what we call the short, long way, because ultimately it's longer. But then there's also the long, short way. The long, short way means it takes a lot of work, and it looks like you're going out of the way and off the path to achieve a certain thing, but ultimately it's the short way, because on your first try you get there and you don't have to retrace your footsteps and see where you went wrong, because you did everything that you had to do along the way. So similarly, the Alter Rebbe is saying that here I'm teaching this to you in a lengthy and short way, with the aid of the Holy One, may he be blessed, with Hashem's help. that the learning of the Tanya should actually help us all in achieving the said goals of overcoming some of our personal struggles by uncovering the soul that we each have. So that's today's lesson, and please join us again next Monday, same time, same venue, and we'll continue on this journey together. If anyone has any questions, I'm going to stop the recording.